was, I put $20 in and pressed the button a couple of times. And the worst thing that could have ever happened was that I won. Within a month, I was the person putting all of their pay in on payday, and it would last an hour. It escalated very quickly to the point of me losing $30,000 within a month. Every time I tried to put my hand up for help, I was just not met with anything. I was using the machine exactly how it was designed to be used. I was, in fact, the perfect customer. They actually did know, and that's their business models.
I need to know to get to where I want to go. Hi, Kate. Welcome to the Feck No More show.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
It is a pleasure to have you here. Kate, before we go too far, do you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
My name's Kate Seselja. I am a mum of 6 and a grandma of a little 2-year-old. And I have been in advocacy for gambling reform for over a decade. I experienced gambling harm from age 18 to 32, and I am co-chair of GHLEE, Gambling Harm Lived Experience Experts, and the Canberra Gambling Reform Alliance, and founder of the Hope Project.
Really, really quick. We need your help to reach more people. We are finding the guests. People are coming on to share their story, and we need to get their message out to people who may be currently in that moment and needing to hear it. And I can't do that without you. Please hit that follow or subscribe button. The like button or the love button really helps us out. Most powerful is to leave a comment to say that you've either enjoyed the show, what you've taken away from it, what stood out for you, how it relates to your life, what you think other people would be able to get from this show. Things like that really do help us grow and make meaningful impact to other people's lives. I'll let you get back to the show. 6 kids and a 2-year-old grandchild. That will keep you busy. We have a 9-month-old grandchild who we had the other night. It was very enjoyable having them stay over. I'm sure your life's fairly hectic then with the work that you currently do in the family.
It's very full and very rewarding, both within my family and the work I do in the community. I love it.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be here today, Kate. Kate, can I ask you to take us back to the beginning of your journey? Take me back to before 18, before anything starts happening in Kate's life. What did your life look like? How do you grow up fairly normal? What does it look like?
Yeah, I grew up in Sydney in a beautiful big family. I'm one of 7, and I have a very close relationship with my parents. And so there was nothing kind of preparing me for what was going to occur at age 18. In fact, made a very conscious decision to stay away from drugs because I didn't want to be addicted, and I didn't really have much of a relationship with alcohol. So gambling really blindsided me as far as being an addiction or something that could harm my well-being. And I know that that's not an uncommon perspective that people take in this country because of the access to gambling. It's been so normalized and it's in all the social spaces. So there's a natural assumption to believe it to be a benign product, but in fact, that is not the case.
Yeah. And I suppose we talk about drugs and alcohol addiction quite a lot in the society. It's been discussed for quite a few decades now. But the gambling one, we don't really talk about it too much, if that makes sense. You mentioned that you were very cautious of getting kind of addicted to the like of drugs or alcohol. You didn't really bother with alcohol. Where did that caution come from, can I ask you? Is it just something you were mindful of at school? Is it something that you've seen firsthand before? Where did that caution come from?
It came from my just observation of others. I did observe some people in my sphere growing up that did go down that path, and I thought, I don't really want that to be part of my life. And my brother actually pulled me aside. He was older than me, and he had known a boy in his friendship group that the first time he tried weed, he had a psychosis. He said, "Please, Kate, just promise me that you never do drugs." And I was like, yeah, it's fine. I don't intend to. And so I really appreciated him giving me that caution and
guidance. Yeah.
caring for me.
I mentioned on a previous podcast where somebody was talking about an addiction that my father had an alcohol addiction. So from a young age, everybody told me about, how it was probably hereditary and how you could have it. And so I was very much warned from that. And I always swore I'd never. So that was the reason that I kind of asked the question, Kate. So you're 18. Are you at college or that whenever you start gambling? Take us through the next stage of your journey.
Just after school.
Just after school.
And I was working full time.
Mm.
I had a boyfriend who was 2 years older than me. So he had been gambling for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't aware of it. And one night we were at a club and he said, sit here. This is how you do it. I put $20 in and pressed the button a couple of times. And the worst thing that could have ever happened was that I won. Unfortunately, one of the best protective factors of somebody not experiencing gambling harm is the first time they try it, they lose their money and they walk away. Yeah. So unfortunately, the win, especially an early win, is the hook. And the industry plans on that engagement so that you keep coming back. And it, I guess I liken it to me taking drugs for the first time. Like that's how it lit up my body. But I didn't know that was what was happening. It wasn't something I put in my body, but yet it was activating me as if I had consumed drugs.
Yeah. And that's easy with the benefit of hindsight and your experience and everything you've learned now, knowing that at 18, that's a totally different experience. So it is. I'm guessing from what you're talking about and knowing a little bit about your journey, this is poker machines, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that first hit, you have the reward, you get the dopamine hit, you're hooked. Is it, do you know straight away from the start that you've this is something that's going to draw you back for more? Or is it something that you weren't really aware of until it kind of built up? What does that look like for you, Kate?
Yeah. My heart was just beating out of my chest and my brain was going a million miles an hour. And I didn't necessarily sit there and think, I can't wait to get back here tomorrow. Yeah. But moving away from that environment and especially having cash in my wallet that I wouldn't have had there otherwise was this inevitability. And because of access to gambling, it suddenly became clear to me in a way that had never been on my radar that there were venue after venue after venue just in my proximity, whether I was walking to work, whether I was getting on the train station, whether I was out partying with my friends, they were there everywhere.
So is it a bit like that red car theory where you don't really know it's there until you start looking for it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So before that, you'd never really noticed them. You'd never really pay attention. But as soon as you'd made that connection and had that little bit of a high, you could start seeing them everywhere.
Yes.
Okay.
You just become hyper-attuned. And to give context for those, young people today, they're not only seeing them everywhere socially, but now they're getting flooded with it on their feeds. Yeah. So it's completely inescapable for them in a way that wasn't present when I was experiencing it. And yet it was just as addictive. You don't have to have the purest form of it. It's the fact that you are exposed that matters. Exposure is everything.
The ways technology has helped increase that exposure over the years has definitely amplified, but that exposure is the exposure back at the time. I suppose I can remember 17, 18-year-old in pool halls back in Ireland, probably that's 30 odd years ago. And there would be people who would have put their whole wages through it on a Friday evening, sat at the machine for 7 or 8, 9 hours and just pump their whole wages in for the week.
Yes.
Well, I tried it at the time and I spent a little bit. I realized that it was costing me too much money and I couldn't afford to do it. So I stopped fairly quickly. But I can definitely see how there was so many other people that it was their whole life. They waited Monday to Friday to get in there to start playing again. Or you'd actually have seen them during the week as well at times. How did it affect your life? What did it look like for you then moving forward? What was your experience?
it really very quickly consumed all of my mental capacity. And within a month, I was the person putting all of their pay in on payday, and it would last an hour.
Yeah.
It just escalated to that level. I very quickly started hating myself. It made me disconnect from my hopes, my dreams, my future that I had in my mind of how it was going to go. And it was completely erased and replaced by this existence of pouring money into a machine.
Mm. Mm. Can you explain the feeling or the emotions that you were getting at the time? And I'm guessing for the first few weeks, I'm guessing it was maybe quite a high emotion. But can you talk through what that looks like for somebody that's listening who maybe hasn't really ever had that connection with it before? What does that feel like for you at the time?
It's like anxiety and stress relief and excitement and tension. It's a really strange feeling. And if you've never experienced it, it's very hard to really build words to describe it. But there's a mental hijack that happens, and
Yeah.
you are soothed in a way by the engagement with the machine temporarily. It's been proven to be a really effective pain relief for, like people who are in medical pain. They don't
They
notice it.
forget where they are.
Yeah,
It's that escape thing.
it is. So it's just horrible the way it can just enter your body in a way that you never consented to, and that doesn't make sense because you're not actually consuming it, but it's consuming you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so it was just an overwhelming experience, and being driven to just run backwards and forwards to the ATM to just keep accessing more money, to just sit there longer. I mean, it makes no logical sense on the outside looking in, but when you're in that state, it makes perfect sense. You just want to be there longer because the illusion of the next press is where your hope rests. Your hopes and dreams that have been erased are now replaced by this one single action of pressing that button.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what is going to come next.
The hope that next win's gonna come is
Yeah.
what you're waiting for. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when the win arrives, all it means is
You have
longer
more money for
time
the
that you
next one.
can sit there.
Yeah.
It's just future losses. It's not
Yeah.
ever, we're done now. There's no satisfying it.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that makes you leave is you run out of time or you run out of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you never walk out going, wow, I feel completely satisfied after that engagement. You walk out just beating yourself up, going, what just happened? Why did that happen again? What is wrong with me? And you just hate yourself more and more because people aren't aware that this is addiction by design. This is intentionally built to do that to a person. So all the time that I was beating myself up thinking, what's wrong with me? I didn't even understand that I was using the machine exactly how it was designed to be used. I was, in fact, the perfect customer.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But you hate yourself for it. And that's weaponizing shame.
Yeah. Look, I definitely had that feeling from the few times that I played where I was like, what? How did I spend so much money on it? So I can imagine that. And I'm guessing I might have had maybe 30 experiences of feeling like that after playing them. It certainly wasn't one and done for me, but it wasn't a long, prolonged period either. That feeling of what did I just do? Can you tell us a little bit more about that there? What that looked like for you?
It speaks to the fact that you never intend for it to go that way, that you say, I'm just going to spend $50. And then as soon as that's gone, you're like, no, I need to access more. I need to access more. So it didn't matter what parameters I set before I walked into a venue. The fact that it just drives you in a way that you can't explain is really cruel, and I think that makes you turn on yourself because you're at war with your logical, rational self and your hijacked, desperate, driven self. And it feels like you don't know what to do and how to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Leaving after a night where you have went over what you said you were going to go over, you put the controls in place, and I can totally understand that. I have a similar impact whenever I open a packet of biscuits. I say I'll only have one, and then they're all gone a few minutes later. So I understand kind of that aspect of it. What is, whenever you're leaving after that, like the thought process then, obviously you have the, oh my God, why do I do this? I'm guessing is a thought. What happens then after that? Is it a case of, did you beat yourself up even more for like a few hours? Was it a case of, okay, look, tomorrow we can fix it? Like, what was that thought process like for you after that immediate kind of loss?
It just keeps kind of resurfacing throughout the day. Like you might be distracted and do other things, and then all of a sudden you would just, your stomach would drop and you're like, oh, I can't believe that happened again, and it's just inescapable. And then you'll get a bill in the mail, and then the feelings of, if I hadn't lost that money, I would have that to pay that. And so there would just be constant reminders of the losses and the accumulating consequences of
Toll that it was taken.
the engagement. Yeah.
How was the kind of negative impacts on your life? Because my thoughts go to a few different levels, emotional and financial, but how was it look like for you, the negative impacts on your life at that point?
Initially, I was by myself. I broke up with that boyfriend. And so I experienced gambling harm for about 12 months by myself.
Yep.
And then I met my husband and we moved away from Sydney and started a life. And I thought, I've left all that behind. That's not part of my life anymore.
Yep.
And it wasn't until about 18 months into our marriage, we'd had one child. We were expecting our second. We were running our own business, about to build a house, living with my in-laws. And it was just this kind of perfect storm of stress and overwhelm. And Mother's Group that I'd been a part of was meeting in the community centre. And then we got told, no, you can't meet here anymore. You've got to find somewhere else to meet. And one of the mums suggested a club. And so that walking into the club just reactivated me.
Just brought everything back.
Hearing the sounds, seeing them. And I'm sitting there, talking to the other mums and playing with my child. And I can hear the sounds of the machines in the background. And it was so distracting to me and activating my body. And I didn't gamble that day, but it was probably within the next day or so that I was by myself and started to access money that we'd had set aside to start the build. And it was horrible.
Yeah. It's very interesting that 18 months away out of the environment.
Yeah.
And then it just gets reactivated straight away again. And that, that's It's no different, I suppose, from an alcoholic that hasn't had a beer in 18 months or a thing. It's that sound to you, and the noise and all the lights flashing, the things that entice people in at the time has
Yeah.
just reactivated it. You said it was a couple of days maybe before you went back again. What does that look like? Do you go on your own? Have you the child? Is it in the evening? What do you tell your husband? Like, what does that look like for you?
It was, yeah, by myself. I got my son babysat, and it just reactivated in me. And because I had never dealt with it formally, I had just kind of put it in a drawer and hoped it would never
Yeah.
come out again.
Mm.
And it it still had a hold of me because shame had never been addressed. The
Okay.
shame
Yeah.
that I felt in experiencing it and feeling like I was profoundly broken.
Mm.
But I didn't have words for that
Mm.
at the time, but
Of course.
it was just heavy in me.
Mm.
And what it represented again was this hope of, do you remember that time you put that money in and you won this? Well, we could get the house built faster so that, as I said, that replacement of logic with the possibility of hope
Yeah. Yeah.
was just drowning out any sense that I was
Yeah.
trying to make to myself. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. First of all, the urge has been reactivated, I'm guessing. And then
Yeah.
it's okay, how do you find logic in
Yeah.
having to fulfill that urge, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It's a case of, well, we can get more funds for the house, we can do the extra things. What does that look like, Kate, then once it's reactivated again, and
Yeah.
how much of an impact does it have?
It escalated very quickly to the point of me losing $30,000 within a month. And that was the first time that I wanted to take my life. But I
Mm-hmm.
was pregnant with our second child. And so I told my husband what had happened. And he was just absolutely blindsided. But he didn't understand what gambling harm looked like,
Yeah.
how to navigate it at all,
Mm.
and so he was just like, "Oh, you're not leaving." And I was like, "No." And so he was clearly responding to the fact that I'd been
So
withdrawing,
unhappy. Yeah.
yeah, and preoccupied. And so for him, he was like, "Oh, well, it's just money, don't worry about it." Like, just
Mm.
tried to take my cards for a little bit, but he needed me to run the business with him.
Yeah.
And so it was just a recipe for disaster, really. We just go through cycles of me being away from it for a period and then being reactivated, then, and it was usually re-triggered by shame
Mm.
or mounting financial stresses,
Yeah.
or even sometimes, you know, unfortunately in families, people unresourcefully use shame to try and control the other person's behavior.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it would get thrown in my face even if I wasn't gambling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there were lots of times where, essentially I was operating for the next decade without any sense of self-esteem. And
Mm.
when you don't have your self-esteem intact, you're completely vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I was just in existence mode,
Mm.
cycling in and out of it. And the way that I describe that for people is, that I've helped over the last few years is they're like, "Oh, I had 5 years away from it, and then I went back." And I'm like, "It doesn't matter how much time and space you have away from it. It's
Mm.
never not going to be a dangerous product.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Mm.
It's never going to be a safe environment, period."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's not designed to be a safe environment.
yes. So when you understand that it's not something you have to have time away from and suddenly you'll be able to control, it's a harmful product designed to addict, and that doesn't change over time.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you can restore yourself.
I totally get that. You just mentioned that that was the first time you thought about taking your own life. Was there other times after that?
Yeah, it was always kind of there in the back of my mind as this, you know, when it gets really bad, I'm that's my option. That's my exit plan, because it really had successfully removed hope from my life. And
Yeah.
I didn't feel worthy anymore of any of the good things. I wasn't able to appreciate compliments people would pay me,
Yeah.
interactions with others would be, I felt like a fraud
Mm.
in all of my relationships. I felt like, yeah, but if you really knew me, you wouldn't say that. And that kept me at a distance from others because I was scared of them seeing the pain that I was in. And
Mm.
I felt what shame does is it makes you feel like you're sealed in a plastic bag and
Mm.
others can't get in and you can't get out. You feel like disconnected from others, and the plastic warps your vision of life. It
Mm.
warps your sense of self, how you perceive things, and you're slowly running out of oxygen. And when shame succeeds, you take your life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the first time that I have heard a guest on the show talking about people thinking their life looked like one thing from the outside, and in reality, how they felt internally was completely the opposite to that. It always seems to have that negative impact and that kind of relationship with shame. Shame is something that comes up quite a lot, whether it's the thought of people think I'm this, but in reality, I feel like I'm something totally different. I remember talking to a mother a few episodes back who everybody thought she was the best mom in the world, and yet internally she felt like she was very much feeling with the chaos that was going on in the background of trying to get the kids to the standard that she had set for herself internally in her head. Libby was her episode. She had this expectation of what a mother should be,
Yeah.
yet inside she felt like she was failing that. Everybody else thought she was achieving it, but she thought she was failing it. You mentioned that that was your third child that was coming. In terms of from the outside world looking in, did you think that everybody thought you were like a perfect family, that everything was okay, that everything was aligned? And yet, I suppose, what was the disconnect? What was the difference between what internally you were thinking, Kate?
Yeah, definitely. I felt pressure to, maintain a facade of having it all together because I
Mm,
was desperately afraid of other people finding out that I was struggling with gambling. It
yeah.
it seemed like such a shameful addiction. And whereas if it had been alcohol or drugs, it would have been visible to people
Mm,
and they would have
yeah. They
noticed.
would have
But
seen it straight away.
yes, but it could be hidden. And so I did successfully hide it
Hide it.
and remember really hamstringing my husband from being able to access more external support because I said to him, if anyone ever finds out about this, I will kill myself. I
Mm,
was so afraid of other people knowing.
yeah.
And it was so unfathomable to me to be doing something like what I'm doing
Yeah.
now in my life. That was never something I thought that I would be able to make peace with, let alone be public about it.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. That shame and I suppose the life that you had envisioned for yourself was not aligned.
Yeah.
Was it? Do you think was it the shame of family members? Was it just people in society? Was it like in general? Looking back on it now, I suppose, and for people listening that might be going through a very similar thing, what do you think that worry about the shame was coming from? Where do you think it came from deep down?
I think there was an element of the expectation of others. And it really, when I think about it, was coming from within.
Within just,
Like it was just, I believed that I had disqualified myself from being normal,
yeah,
and the main motivator when I look back at, what drove me back to gambling, ironically, was trying to get back to never having gone
gambling.
into a venue and gambled in the first place.
Yeah.
In my mind, mentally, I was like, I just want to get back to the beginning, and
Yeah, it was.
yes. And so I've met thousands of people in the last decade who have had that same mindset. They're like, but if
Mhm.
I just get back, and I'm like, no, 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 you have to understand, you're not going in that direction. Your
Yeah.
life is going forward. You
Mm.
have to be able to make peace with what
You
you've
can't change it.
lost.
Yeah.
You can't change it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that is really hard for some people initially to kind of wrap their head
Mm.
around and understand that every time you focus on what you've lost, you're facing the wrong direction. You're
Yeah.
not moving in a forward motion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I totally understand that. It's something that whenever I'm working with the clients like yourself in the coaching space, it's the past is only useful to learn things from. There's no point in trying to live in the past or change the past. It's very much about who do I want to be in the future and how do I get there. So how long is that period? And whenever you said that you would have time off and then you would kind of go back till you get drawn back in again. Over that, I'm guessing it's another then kind of 6-year period roughly. How often are you kind of getting breaks from? Had you tried giving up, like in between that? Had you kind of thought to yourself, okay, do you know what? I need to stop this. It's not benefit. What that look like for you? What that struggle look like from over that period of you first think this is not good. This is gonna end up me taking my own life. What's
yeah.
that next few years look like in terms of trying to stop or trying to get out of it?
I mean, every time I walked out of the club, I would say to myself, that's it. That's the last time.
Mm,
I'm never going back. I'm never going back. But the first time I actually took action on it was
mm,
in 2003. And so I was, about 3 years into it again
yeah,
after that initial relapse. And I rang Lifeline and was told, just don't wear shoes. If you don't wear shoes, you won't be able to get into a venue, so you won't be able to gamble. And I was like, what? What? What are my options here? Like, I need
yeah,
help. Yeah, I need a
yeah,
rehab. If I was addicted to drugs or alcohol, there'd be a rehab. Where can I
yeah,
go? And they said, no, there's no rehab for gambling. And if there was,
yeah,
it'd probably be for men. And so that just made me feel like I was the only woman
yeah,
experiencing gambling harm.
yeah. It put
So
you
again,
with
I
another
just
layer on top of it.
just just shrunk back down
Then,
into, I have to figure this out on my own.
then,
There's no one here to help me. And then it was years later again, and I don't know how I found out that there was a counselling service. I went to the counsellor. The counselling office was opposite a club.
yeah,
It was just so
yeah,
disgusting. And I went there and yeah, the the people that worked there didn't have any insight into what I was going through.
yeah.
It was not specialist understanding or compassion or care. It was like, it just made me feel stupid, you know.
Generalized counseling, just. Mm,
And then I gave that up, and was another couple of years, and then somebody recommended a psychologist. I went to her and she just charged me $200 to a session to basically give me no
no, no
valuable
useful tool.
information.
Yeah,
It felt like at every turn, every time I tried to put my hand up for help, I was just not met with anything that
mm,
helped make sense of what I was experiencing. And so I battled on for those last few years by myself and was driven to the point of almost taking my life in 2012. But I was pregnant with our sixth child. And so I didn't go through with it because I didn't want to harm my child. I just couldn't be here anymore. And that morning after that night, I asked my husband to take me to go see a counsellor again. And I remember driving there thinking, well, we'll see how this goes. I'm not holding my breath, but
Yeah.
at least I'll see a counsellor until the baby's born, and then I'll decide whether or not I deserve to be here.
Yeah.
And she was amazing. She was so compassionate and helped me to understand that my self-esteem had been completely destroyed and that I was completely destroyed from age 18, and that she just helped me make sense of my life again and start to celebrate changing my relationship to everything. It wasn't just my relationship to gambling. It was changing my relationship with my husband, changing my relationship with my kids. Then she said, oh, we've got a group if you'd like to join it. And when I walked into that group environment, that was the first group or encounter with other people who'd experienced gambling harm. And I was like, you understand what it's like. Like I felt seen and heard in a whole nother way.
Yeah.
And that's really what has driven me most in advocacy, is being able to be there and help other people feel seen and heard in their journey, to help them make sense, to help build language around things that they have
Don't
not been
understand.
able to understand or articulate.
Yeah. There's something very, very powerful about knowing that other people have made it through the other side and have dealt with similar issues.
Yeah.
For me, I suppose years after having gone through the AAA program with my father, it's that belief that it instills to know that other people have been able to find a way to turn this around and make their life more meaningful. And belief is such a very powerful tool. I use it all the time, not just for myself, but with the other people I work with. Once we can give people the belief that they can do it, then it's you're already halfway. The battle is already won nearly, because it's whenever people just can't see how they can turn this aspect of their life around, whether it's gambling, whatever addiction it is, or negative thoughts that are holding people back. Once they can see that there is a way and get curious about what that looks like for them, it is such a powerful moment. Your Feck It No More moment. I know it's unusual because it comes slightly after you've found that kind of help and support. What does that look like to you, Kate?
Well, it's unique in a way that I think is really, really important, because a lot of people might be in recovery, but I don't classify them as being restored. And so this moment came, it was about 6 months after that night I almost took my life. And a guy that I knew just kind of walked up to me and went, how's your recovery going? And it just landed on me in a really heavy way and made me feel disconnected from other people again, and made me feel like, no, there's all these normal people and then there's me. I'm no longer in the addict camp, but now I'm in a special kind of room called recovery.
And
And
then
I was like,
and in between space.
yeah. And I was like, no, I'm actually human and I'm no different from you. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
And it was this real moment of, I am whole. I'm reclaiming my wholeness. I'm no longer living under this shadow of shame, whether it be via addiction or via recovery or anything. It was, I'm okay with my humanness and I actually don't care what you think about me because I have struggled. And that no longer I felt disqualified me from being worthy of being a good mum or worthy of being a good wife or worthy of being a good friend. I didn't have to qualify those things in my life with a perfect scorecard. I was okay that I'd come through a storm and I was scarred a bit, but I could use those scars to help others.
And to shape the future of your life.
Yes.
It's such a powerful concept, Kate, and I really do appreciate you taking the time and coming on here today to share that. Because I have spoke with other people in the past as well, even just on the podcast. Thinking back, Jaron, who was recovering from alcohol, drugs addiction, was homeless. He had similar kind of concept with the AA program, where he felt like it was people talking about being in recovery, and it held him in that point before. It held him as somebody that wasn't quite over it. He was always going to be there. After 3, 4, 5 years, he was always going to be in recovery, and that was something that didn't sit quite well with him.
Yeah.
And I explained at the time that from the bias I have with my father, he was off alcohol for 17 years. And at that point, I can remember the best times of his life was whenever he was in a program and
Yeah.
working with the steps. And he openly, said he had a problem, he was dealing with it. So for me at that point, whenever he stopped going, I could see his decline. Now, I thought at that point was the thing that was keeping him sober. And after he moved away from that, that's where the decline was. So I had a bias that, okay, one of these programs where they talk about being in recovery and that was a good thing.
Yeah.
But obviously, years later, fast forward, I do go through the results coach and I get a lot more into neurological language. And I understand how the mind works a lot more. And being held in the past and attached to something that's a negative always leaves that negative connection to it as well. So for me, it's the frame. Them programs are great, and also programs that people can do it on their own, or start investing in their own kind of mindset and their own recovery and seeing themselves in a different light and changing the mindset and the neurological pathways and how they see themselves. Either of them are great, but for me, I think it comes down to the frame that you're looking at yourself in that moment at that time. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you were sick of looking at yourself in that recovery frame and wanted to get into your future self. That stepping away and making that decision at that Feck no more. How did that positively impact your life then moving forward? Because it looks like and it sounds like it's made a positive impact to your life. Really quickly, talking of positive impacts, if you would really like to make a positive impact in other people's lives, you can do this by sharing the show right now on your feed. For every 5 people you know, there's one person affected by addiction. You sharing this message with that person may make a positive impact on their life. Or share it on your feed. I know what it's like. Sometimes you can't just say to the person, hey, you should check this out. Put it on your social feed and trust that they'll find the message there. And again, thank you for being such a vital part of what we're trying to do here at Feck It No More. Let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. It made me think about the impact shame had on keeping me silent for all those years. And I very, very naively walked into advocacy thinking, you know what? I think I need to tell the industry that this is happening to people, that it's harming people. Like, I was so naive and thought, wow, I need to warn them so that they can stop this from happening to other people. And because if I was silent, like maybe other people are silent, maybe they just don't know. And
It's not
it
the
didn't
case.
it didn't take me long to realize that they actually did know, and that's their business model. So that was a real eye-opening lesson in humanity, and not everyone operates off the same playbook of, do to others as you
Morals.
want them to do to you. It's like, that's not a thing in that landscape.
Yeah. Just assuming that everybody else has the same morals or values as ourselves is a sure way to get set up for a disappointment. I can understand what that would look like, moving into trying to change the mindset of an industry that's making so much money off it. How has that looked for you now that you are working in that space all the time? I suppose there's probably a couple of different angles. One, there's the work that you do with people individually through the Hope Project, and then there is your other work that you're doing through the foundation, the GHLEE Foundation. What does that look like on a regular basis for you now at the moment? What does life look like for you currently?
Well, busy, full. Yeah. So I work with people and families on the ground. I help educate communities, organizations, businesses, schools, you name it. Anyone that will have me in to speak, I'll speak on this topic till the cows come home. And then I fight legislation and policy change from a state level and federally, and work internationally as part of the global public health movement to create gambling reform, because it is a global crisis. But Australia is leading the way as far as the nation experiencing the highest levels of harm, not leading the way in reforms. So we've got a long way to go. And so countries actually consult with me on what not to do. What, if some countries are at the beginning of their experience of gambling harm, especially with the digital landscape just moving into countries that are completely ill-prepared for that level of harm. So countries like Bali, countries like South Africa, so many countries, it's just they're scrambling to try and catch up with the level of harm that their people are experiencing because of access that gambling companies have.
What is it that we can do? What are countries doing that are maybe further ahead of us on this, Kate? What are they doing? What systems have they got in place?
There isn't a gold standard yet. The countries that are doing well are the ones that have prohibited it from, their people accessing it, because in reality, there is no safe level of gambling, even though people might go, I have fun with it, it's fine. It's like, that's not the point. There is so many people experiencing gambling harm in all of its forms. And the way that it's been normalized in this country is 600,000 children last year gambled in Australia, $18 million. So that's 12 to 17-year-olds that know how to put on multis, that know how to know the odds and can recognize all of the sports betting brands. They've grown up being flooded by thousands of gambling ads in a week.
Yeah.
And then they're getting modeled on social media by influencers and celebrities.
Sports people. Yeah.
What can we do is, from a state level, is support your state politicians to implement loss limits and, gambling reforms on land-based gambling. Federally, that's where the sports betting and online space comes into play. So right now, federally, there's a campaign called Stop Gambling Ads, and that needs supporting because the legislation has gone to the Senate inquiry. I mean, it should have been handled 3 years ago after the Murphy inquiry, and the government's just delayed it. And since that delay, $104 billion has been lost since that delay.
Which has a toll on a personal level to a lot of people, not just the financial level.
If you think that every aspect of our society is not mopping up that $104 billion of harm, you're kidding yourself. It's impacting small business. It's impacting families breaking down. It's impacting on levels of crime in your area. It's impacting on family and domestic violence, homelessness, suicides. It has a huge ripple effect. And like we took action against big tobacco once we understood the impact of secondary smoke.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to understand, that this is a public health issue impacting us all, whether you gamble or not.
Yeah, I totally agree. Kate. That legislation, I think, is it in the next 6 or 8 weeks, there's going to be a vote on it,
Yes.
from memory. Yeah. Yeah, and I encourage everybody to jump online and I think there's a petition. I think I signed a petition last week
Yes.
that was online. So I'll definitely leave a link again on that. The work that we're doing in that space at the moment, the work that you're doing in that space at the moment, what's the biggest challenge?
Our political leaders, the influence that gambling interests have over our politicians is
Yeah,
despicable. It's not even in the shadows. It's loud and proud. I mean,
yeah.
they are so interwoven. The relationship of gambling vested interests and political leaders is unprecedented. And
Mm,
it's just not a fair fight. So when I've been in 10 years in unpaid advocacy, and yet all of the head gambling lobbyists are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do what they
to
do.
keep it happening. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
but that doesn't diminish the power of people and authenticity. And I have been absolutely blown away by how many messages of support that I receive on a day-to-day basis. And I think you ask anyone and they know someone who's experienced gambling harm.
yeah.
You know, it's happened for so long in this country. It's gone unattended for so
Mm,
long that you cannot be in a room and say, does anyone know about gambling harm? And have multiple people stick up their hands and say,
mm,
my mum, my dad, my uncle, my grandfather, my this, my that. It doesn't discriminate. And it's an absolute horrific legacy of this country that
mm,
we've allowed it to go on as such a predatory industry. I mean,
yeah,
they are they have been able to self-regulate, meaning they could have put consumer protections in place if they were
yeah.
concerned about consumers. And one of my main arguments with government is stop having them at the table, because they're never
Mm,
going to agree to do what's necessary to
yeah,
protect consumers.
yeah,
So stop. They are the perpetrators of harm. They are not
mm,
stakeholders.
yeah. I totally get that. I was talking to a guest the other night, and he had said, look, it's become part of our society to the point where every sporting arena, anytime you go to play sport, anytime you go to watch sport, anything that's related to sport is connected to it. It's there, it's in your face. And he said that it's such a part of the society now that we have to hear more people talking about it and the impacts of it to start changing how society sees it.
Mm.
And I thought that was an important takeaway and an important message from Mark. He also mentioned that they're actively pushing ads on people that would have high accounts and that they can tell has got a problem to try and entice them back in again and spend more
Yes.
money and play more money, like giving them a 200 free bet, knowing that they'll spend thousands after that.
Yeah.
And morally, that's just completely wrong at any level. Never mind, to sit back and think that our government that are there, that are meant to be there for the people and support the people, can't
Yeah.
put some controls in place around that. So I do think that we have to do more talking about it and pushing the stories of the impact and talking to our MPs about, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to change this in order to have any hope? But it is an uphill battle.
It is. And I knew it was not going to be a quick battle, but this is the hill I'm prepared to die on. You know,
Mm,
it's not okay that this has continued for as long as it has in this country unaddressed. It's enough is enough. The moment that really broke me when I realized politically that they just didn't care about my life in any way, shape, or form. I was an allowable collateral damage of a tax revenue stream and industry profits, period.
Yeah.
And when I made sense of that reality, I was like, oh my gosh, there's just been this like absolute willful blindness to money coming in to government via taxes or money being lost out of our communities and no one really understanding the human carnage of that money.
Yeah, that for me is what price do we put on people's lives? What price do we put on their mental health? What price do we put on the family and the kids? And maybe that's something that we should ask. Do you think there was any sort of a negative impact to your kids as you were going through them years of gambling? Because I'm guessing it takes it. I know from a child of an alcoholic, it had an impact. But had you an impact, Kate, that you noticed or has seen since?
I think that was something I was most afraid of, was what impact have I made? What marks have I left behind? I tried as hard as I could to shield them from it, like they were never in that environment, but they had a mother who was deeply impacted by an external force that made me not as present as I wanted to be. It made me distracted or irritable when I needed to be there for them.
Yeah.
There are whole years I can't even remember I was in such a state of existing. So I can't change that,
Of
but
course.
the years of repair and continue to do with my family is important. There's no topic off the table. I've made it abundantly clear that I'm sorry for what we experienced as a family and that I've been absolutely committed to being the mum that I wanted to be, that I didn't have access to when I was drowning.
Stuck in the cycle.
Yeah. So we don't look back and dwell on that, but
Of
we
course.
are, have grown stronger through it. And I'm so proud of my children. I'm proud that our marriage is still intact. We have our gorgeous granddaughter and, having all my kids home and playing board games and hanging out and laughing our heads off. That's the best gift of my life. And seeing that repair happen in other families and being a small part of contributing to that is everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes it all worthwhile, Kate. And thank you so much for sharing that, because if you don't ever get the help and the support that you need, your family maybe doesn't end up in such a love and supporting way that it is. And there's so many other families out there at the moment who, because of the policies that are in place, because of how easy accessible it is, they still have new people and people that have been living with it for years falling into that trap.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people to know that we're not just talking about trying to put some controls around gambling in a way that's ethical, which would be a great start at the end of the day. But we are really trying to, how do we create an environment where our people can really grow and flourish and live their best lives possible, that have that ripple effect, as you said, on their families in a positive way. So for you to be part of that and to put in so much of your hard work and effort into making that happen and help people get to that space, and then also the work that you do campaigning to our powers that be, our politicians that should care for us, I just want to take a moment and really thank you and congratulate you for the work that you're doing on the behalf of so many other people, Kate. It is very rewarding work. I'm sure it's work that goes unnoticed for quite a lot of the time, but I want you to know that I see the work that you're doing, and I'm sure our community will as well.
Thank you. That means a lot. It's hard work, but so worthwhile as far as making sure that other people's voices are heard. I was speaking at a function that the Nepalese community put on over the weekend, and they have experienced distress as far as sending international students to this country with bright futures or promises of bright futures, only to have bodies of these students returned 6 months later after experiencing gambling harm.
Mm.
How horrible is that? That
Mm.
that they've gone from a completely gamble-free environment in their country to being so exposed to this normalization of gambling, getting in an absolute desperate state and taking their lives. I
Yeah.
was absolutely aghast with
Mm.
the level of harm that community is experiencing, and they're not isolated in
They're
that.
not on their own. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's definitely, as I said earlier, one life that we lost to it is too many. I know that in the last, what are we now? July, since October.
Mm.
You're probably about the fifth person that I've heard a very similar story to. And it's devastating. So I think that it's important that we continue to talk about these stories. It's important that people understand the real impacts that it has on people's lives. And I'm just really privileged that you were able to come on today and share that experience with our listeners today, because it is an important message that they needed to hear, Kate. Kate, I was trying to ask a question that if somebody is currently going through this right now, maybe they're at the beginning of their journey, and I've spoke to people where it's been anything from a 2-year process to a 10-year process. Yours was an 8-year process. Do you think, is there any one hard truth question that you could have asked yourself at any time along this journey that might have got you to a better place quicker?
I wish I'd been curious with myself and not judgmental.
Okay. That's very
I
powerful.
Yeah, I look back now and I spent so much time just beating myself up,
Mm.
and that keeps you trapped in a desperate state of being disconnected, and your body can't find answers when you're beating yourself up. So there was so much I didn't know about me and so much I didn't know about the whole gambling landscape. And I
Yeah.
couldn't see that until I started to be curious
Yeah.
with myself and with all that was at play. And
Mm.
that's something that I, try and help connect people to when they reach out to me. And yeah, it's really, really powerful. And when I have success with people in that space, the way I know is they say to me, "You helped me to hate the gambling industry and not myself." And I go,
Mm.
bingo.
Yeah.
That's one
Yeah.
more life back on our side, not
Yeah.
to them.
Not
And
still on the dark side. Yeah.
yeah,
It is.
so
It's such a powerful concept. And I do want you to, I want to thanks for sharing it. It is something that I have said before. If we can get curious about why we are where we are and curious about where we want to go to, and just figure out what that gap in the middle is, it is it's a very simple concept, but a very powerful concept in terms of being able to change things. And I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but you would have asked that question to yourself a long time ago.
um,
Would you have let it go for the 8 years, or would you have asked that question earlier?
like if I knew to ask that question,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the 15 years that I struggled with gambling was the 15 years that I ended up having my 6 children. So
Yeah.
I can't say I hated those 15 years,
Yeah.
because that they're also the most important years of
Yeah.
my life. I hate that it happened to me, that I was blindsided by it, that I couldn't make a conscious decision around whether or not to engage with gambling because I didn't
Yeah.
know all that was at play.
Yeah.
If I'd have known I was 5 times more likely to take my life than any other addiction, would I have gone near it? No way. So I hate the deceptive nature of the environment, that it's intentionally deceptive
Designed. Yeah.
and designed. But I am grateful for the insights that I've gained from the experience and the level of compassion that I now hold for humanity, and
Yeah.
the power that vulnerability gives us as human beings to create connection and safety for others.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. And it's not unsimilar to the way my other guests have answered that question. There is a real common theme growing where it doesn't matter whether it's been a 5-year drug alcohol addiction, even somebody that ended up in prison and had to get their life back on track, has said it has made them the person that they were today.
Yeah.
And again, it's a real common theme that people wouldn't change the experience they have. I suppose the message I'd like to tell for people to take away is, if you're going through something hard and difficult, the sooner you can speak up, talk about it, get curious about it, ask for help, the sooner you can start getting to that positive place. And I do believe that whether you've had a negative experience or a hard time or a challenging time for 6 months or 10 years, it's still a hard time. And I would encourage people not to take it for a long time, to try and be proactive, because I suppose a lot of what we want to do with the Feck It No More moment, that can be at any part of your journey. And I encourage people to try and find it and get to it as soon as possible that might be going through it a hard time. For people that have gone through it and have found it, being able to realize, I can't change the past. I'm not beating myself up about the past. And I'm really grateful that it happened, because it has led me to this point, is a very powerful aspect of that as well. So for me, I see it in the two elements. For people that's going through it, I'd hate to think that somebody's sitting there listening thinking, that's okay, I can let this go for another few years. For the people that have gone through it, if it's made them stronger, I can see how it might give somebody an opportunity to go, okay, I'll give it another couple of years. I'm only at the beginning of my journey. So that's the kind of knock-on effect of why I asked that question. I suppose it surprises me that pretty much word for word, the last 5 people who have asked that question have said the exact same thing, which is interesting. So I might have to rechange that question. Kate, where can our listeners find you?
The Hope Project Australia.com.au is my website, and GHLEE.org is the GHLEE website. Instagram, Facebook. People often send me, DMs on Instagram or on Facebook, and I love hearing people's stories or being able to help point them in the direction of help or support services near them. It's so important. If you want to see changes in the poker machine space, to go to change.org, and GHLEE have a petition called Lost Limits, Not Lost Lives. And we have over 12,000 signatures on that petition. And federally, if you're wanting to see this, getting rid of gambling ads, you can look up on David Pocock's social media or the Alliance for Gambling Reform's social media. They'll have a link for, I think it's stopgamblingads.org, is it?
The Alliance one is the one that I was on the other night and left it, and I did leave it in that show notes. I'll also leave it in this show notes as well. I can't remember it offhand, but I'm pretty sure it's the Alliance Reform.
Yeah. So, they're really important organizations to connect with. The one quote that I really love on why it's so important to be curious with yourself, I'm sure you've probably heard it. It's from Socrates. And when I started getting curious with myself, I was like, hold on, who said know thyself? That seems like it's a really important thing. And when I Googled who said that, Socrates popped up. And one of his quotes is, people make themselves appear ridiculous when they try to know obscure things before they know themselves. So, I think it's really powerful when we understand that in context of, we go to school for 13 years and learn all of these obscure facts.
Yeah.
And we learn nothing about ourselves as human beings. And then we're thrust out into adulthood completely clueless about who we are.
Who we are, hoping for the best and hoping that we make it. I definitely agree. I think I've said this before, but whenever I started to really focus on myself, the stories, the negative stories that I told myself, all the things, the limiting beliefs that I had, once I really started to get curious about where did they come from, why have I got them, how do I change them, that my life took a dramatic improvement and change in a positive direction. Now that was at, I'm guessing, about 28, 29. I could easily have done that at 7 or 8 while I was at school if there had been a program for it. It would have saved a lot of time and a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress and a lot of other things. So I think the sooner we can get curious about our own life, who we are, who we want to become, puts us on a fast track to being a lot more happier and content, I believe. Kate, I really do appreciate your time today, and I am very conscious of your time. Is there any message you would like to leave with our listeners before I let you go for today?
I just hope that you have heard very clearly that if you're experiencing gambling harm, that this has happened to you. It's not who you are. And that if any help that you've tried to access has just tried to make you feel stupid or not really made you feel seen and heard, then please reach out. I will help connect you with somebody that gets what you're going through. And it isn't okay that our society has been harmed by gambling, and that we need to come together and push back against this very predatory industries, both land-based and online, and reclaim our safe social spaces and not have a landscape that's just waiting for people to fall into a trap. It's horrible that that's the current climate.
That's a real powerful message, and thank you for sharing that, Kate. Kate, hopefully we can reconnect again in the future, maybe back have you on again to hear how things are going, what you're currently up to, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Love to.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, look, Kate, we will leave it there for tonight. And now for the legal stuff. I am just some guy who has worked very hard on himself to get him from where he wasn't happy to a place where he is supremely happy, with the transformation of thinking he couldn't do everything to now believes that he can do anything. That was a long journey for me. Along that journey, I've spent 30 years of finding what's the best way to change our mindsets, to get us to a better place. I've completed a results coaching course, which enables me to coach others, which is something I've been doing for the last 5 years. And with my work with individuals, leaders, and businesses, I get to see the challenges that people are facing every day. So if you're in need of some support and help, please seek professional advice or reach out to us at Feck It No More or SPC Success, and we'll certainly be able to point you in the right direction. Thanks for watching today's episode.